When we talk about the observer effect, we need to start with the fundamental idea that observation is never a neutral act. People like to imagine that looking at something, or paying attention to it, is just a passive process. You gather data, you measure, you record, and the thing remains what it always was. But that's not true. The very act of observation changes the thing being observed, and this isn't just some abstract philosophical claim. It's a fact that's embedded in the deepest levels of reality. In physics, for instance, you can't measure a system without altering its state. When you shine light on an electron to see where it is, you change its trajectory. The observation itself becomes part of the event. There's no such thing as stepping outside reality to look at it, from the outside. You're entangled with what you observe, and in that entanglement, you alter the outcome. Now, what does that mean in the broader sense? It means that the world you live in is not some static, objective backdrop that unfolds the same way whether you engage with it or not. Instead, your attention, your gaze, your act of looking, reshapes the thing you're looking at. Think about it. When you walk into a room and you actually notice someone, they change. Their posture shifts, their tone of voice adapts, their sense of self adjusts in real time. That's the observer effect playing out in human psychology, but the principle is the same. You can't be a detached spectator. By watching, you're participating. By paying attention, you're intervening. And this isn't just about physics experiments or social behavior, it's about life itself. Your perception directs reality. If you look at a situation with suspicion, you'll provoke defensiveness. If you look with genuine curiosity, you invite openness. What you see is not independent of how you see it. That means your perception carries responsibility. Every glance, every act of attention, is like a vote for a certain kind of world. It nudges reality one way or another. To ignore this is to live unconsciously, to imagine that you're just a bystander, when in truth you're constantly shaping what unfolds around you. So the observer effect is not a scientific oddity, it's the unavoidable consequence of being a conscious participant in reality. The most striking example of this principle is found in quantum mechanics, particularly in the famous double-slit experiment. When electrons are fired through two slits toward a screen, they behave like waves, creating an interference pattern, as if each electron passes through both slits simultaneously. But the moment you place a detector to measure which slit the electron actually travels through, the pattern collapses. The electrons stop behaving like waves and begin acting like discrete particles. In other words, the act of measurement, the act of observation, changes the outcome. It isn't that you simply revealed what was already there, you forced reality to take a particular form. Now, it would be a mistake to think of this experiment as just some esoteric detail of physics, a curiosity locked away in laboratories. It carries a message far deeper. Reality does not unfold independently of how it's engaged with. Potential exists as a spectrum of possibilities, but attention, observation, and measurement collapse that spectrum into something definite. And that's not only true of electrons, it's true in human experience as well. Consider your daily life. Possibilities surround you. Paths you could walk, choices you could make, futures that are open. But the moment you focus on one, the moment you decide to see it and act on it, you collapse those possibilities into something real. That's not metaphorical poetry, it's the psychological and existential equivalent of the quantum observation. The experiment is a mirror, reflecting back at us a fundamental truth. Observation brings reality into being in a particular form. And so the question is never simply, what's out there? But also, how are you looking at it? Because the way you look is inseparable from what you end up finding. Attention is not a passive process, it's not simply the mind's camera recording what's already there. Attention is an act of selection, and selection is an act of creation. When you decide to focus on something, you don't just highlight it, you transform it. You cut it out from the background of infinite noise, and you make it meaningful. Out of all the countless signals, details, and possibilities around you, your attention says, this is what matters. And in that act, the thing itself changes. It becomes charged with significance. It becomes part of the story you're living. Think of it this way, you never experience reality in its raw form. You experience the parts you pay attention to. Two people can stand in the same room, and one might notice the broken light bulb, the chipped paint, the clutter, while the other sees the warmth of the sunlight, the comfort of the furniture, the potential for connection with the people inside. The room hasn't changed, but the reality each of them lives in is radically different. Why? Because attention carved out a different world for each. This isn't just a matter of perspective, it's power. If your attention constantly circles around what's broken, what's threatening, what's corrupt, you're building a world filled with decay and fear. But if your attention identifies strength, order, and possibility, then reality itself takes on those qualities. You're not imagining them, you're actualizing them. The observer effect, at the psychological level, is this: what you attend to grows, and what you ignore withers. And here lies the responsibility. You cannot escape the fact that your gaze shapes the reality you inhabit. To pretend otherwise is to walk blind, to believe you're drifting in a neutral world, when in truth your focus is quietly determining its structure. That's why attention is so profoundly moral. To attend is to affirm, and to affirm is to give life. You create by noticing, by choosing what deserves to exist in your field of consciousness. And once you grasp that, you realize, you don't merely live in reality, you participate in weaving it, moment by moment, with the fabric of your attention. You can see the observer effect in the simplest human interactions. The moment someone realizes they're being watched, they change. Their shoulders straighten, their tone shifts, their behavior adapts. It's as though your gaze itself acts as a sculptor, pressing against the raw clay of their personality and shaping it in real time. This isn't an illusion, it's a demonstration that attention is active, not passive. People don't behave in the same way in private as they do under observation. The presence of an observer becomes part of the event, altering its course. But this doesn't stop at individuals. It extends to entire systems of behavior and culture. When a workplace introduces cameras, productivity shifts. When a child knows their parent is watching, their decisions bend under that awareness. The very knowledge that someone sees is enough to reshape action. That's the psychological observer effect. Your perception doesn't just describe reality, it disciplines it. And the same applies to yourself. The way you attend to your own actions alters them. If you monitor your behavior with honesty, you refine it. If you ignore it, you drift into carelessness. Self-awareness is self-observation, and like every other act of observation, it changes what it touches. You don't become better by accident, you become better because your own gaze forces you to reckon with who you are. So, observation is not neutral in the psychological domain. It's transformative. To be seen is to be changed. And to see yourself clearly is to open the possibility of transformation. Just as in physics, the act of measurement collapses possibilities into reality, in human life the act of attention collapses potential into action. The observer effect is the silent force shaping who we are and who we become. What follows from all this is a sobering realization: perception is not innocent. The way you look at the world doesn't merely inform you about it, it changes it. That means every act of observation carries responsibility. If your attention has the power to alter reality, then how you direct it matters profoundly. You cannot escape this by claiming neutrality. To say, "I'm just looking," is like saying, "I'm just pressing this button," as though pressing a button doesn't launch consequences into the world. Think about how easily cynicism can poison a relationship. If you look at someone through the lens of suspicion, if every glance is sharpened by doubt, they will respond to that perception. They will stiffen, close off, become guarded. Soon enough, the very thing you suspected begins to take form. You don't simply see betrayal, you help conjure it. On the other hand, if you attend to someone's potential, if your gaze affirms their strength and worth, you call those qualities forward. That's not wishful thinking, it's the observer effect operating in human life. Your perception invites certain realities into existence and discourages others. And that's where the moral weight lies. You can't merely be a passive witness to your own life or to the lives around you. Every glance, every interpretation, every act of focused awareness participates in shaping what becomes real. To look at the world with contempt is to build a contemptible world. To look at it with integrity and courage is to give those qualities more ground on which to stand. The observer effect forces the recognition that perception is creative, and creation is always ethical. So the burden is heavy, you must take responsibility for how you see. Not because the world bends to your imagination in some trivial sense, but because your attention is one of the forces that solidify potential into reality. The world doesn't just happen in front of you, it happens through you, in part, because of where you place your gaze. If you want a better world, you must first learn to look at it better. To observe with truth, with clarity, and with care, that is not optional. It is the responsibility built into the very act of being conscious. You can't avoid shaping reality. That's the unavoidable conclusion of the observer effect. The question is never whether you influence the world, it's how you influence it. Every glance, every focus of attention, every act of perception leaves a trace. You are not standing outside the flow of events, you are woven into them. Your observation bends possibility into actuality, and that power carries a demand. Use it well. If you meet the world with bitterness, that bitterness spreads. If you meet it with fear, fear multiplies. But if you confront it with honesty, with courage, with an eye for what could be rather than only for what is, you cultivate growth. You bring into being futures that would not exist otherwise. And that's the essence of responsibility. You are not only living in a world, you are helping to create it. So, you must decide. Will your attention serve chaos or order, destruction or renewal? Will you collapse possibility into despair, or into hope? That choice is made every time you look at something, every time you decide what matters and what doesn't. The observer effect reminds us that consciousness is participatory, it is a form of authorship. You are writing part of the story simply by being present in it. And that means your life is not trivial. Your attention is not wasted. To look with care is to give structure to reality itself. To look with contempt is to erode it. There is no neutral ground. So look carefully, look truthfully, because how you see is inseparable from what will come to be.